The Fed just cut interest rates for the first time in 9 months, and the market was a complete chop fest. Today, we cover how interest rates are affecting the stock market, why it chopped so hard today, and what opportunities are lining up for tomorrow. We're not wasting any time either, so let's get right to it.
The market was wild today, but maybe not wild in the way that many people had expected. We can see that whenever the FOMC interest rate decision came out, we initially saw the market shoot up a little bit. We didn't necessarily get to all-time highs or anything, but then as the event went on, and especially whenever Jerome Powell started speaking, we did see the market start to shoot down a little bit more, and then it chopped right back up. So today was definitely a chop fest, Mike. It was a very choppy day, and I would say a hard to trade day for many traders out there. But let's go ahead and get into the details of what exactly happened. So the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 25 basis points. There was no real surprise there. There was pretty much a 100% chance of a cut being priced in, and that's what ended up happening. So we saw the 25 basis point cut, and Fed officials actually don't see inflation getting back to 2% until 2028, and Jerome Powell indicated that the economy is also slowing down. So we're seeing a big shift here by the Federal Reserve, right? Jobs data is no longer solid, and it's forcing the Federal Reserve to do this 25 basis point cut. All participants agreed on this 25 basis point cut, except for one, which is Trump's new appointee, Stephen Moran, who actually voted for a 50 basis point cut. But Mike, I think the biggest thing to take from this is going into October now, this is also solidifying another cut coming into play. So this will be a big deal, and now there's actually being 3 cuts priced in 2025.
Here comes the rate cut cycle, and one thing that I thought was especially interesting about today's FOMC meeting is that we got an inside look as to what Fed officials expect out of the economy, and you could just say interest rates going forward. We got their updated dot plot, and we can see that there's a median expectation of around 50 basis points more in rate cuts for the rest of 2025, and of course there's one Fed official who didn't want any cuts this year. That might have been Lisa Cook, we'll see. But there were 9 Fed officials who backed only 2 cuts or less, and there were 10 who backed 3 cuts.
Yeah, there were, and I actually am pretty happy with the overall Federal Reserve looking at more rate cuts this year. I mean, it's exactly what the market's pricing in. We can see that there's an 87% chance of a cut in October. There's an 80% chance of a cut in December, so that would be the final 2 cuts there. And on Kalshi, we can see that there's actually being priced in a 67% chance of exactly 3 cuts this year. And this was actually under 50% before today's meeting. And I think that's something that really helps price this in is just how much Powell stressed that the jobs market was weak, right? This was a huge headline. We've been talking about this for a few weeks, and it's been kind of solidifying these overall cuts. So as I think about this and I go forward, Mike, I'm looking at the S&P 500 today. It was extremely choppy. Everybody's still eyeing up, though, the recent all-time high, which was actually made just yesterday morning. So I'm watching that all-time high. It's very close to 662.65. If we can see a solid push above 661 tomorrow, I will be watching for that previous high to come back into play and ultimately a new all-time high end up being tested or made there. Now, as we start to look at the SPY and just look at the choppiness today, I didn't like the way that it ran down to that 655 support, and it broke right through 650, 650 as well. I think that those are going to be 2 critical areas of support to keep on the radar tomorrow, especially 655 around where that low of day was today. Even a move down to there could be advantageous to play, and especially if we break under that, I think that we could end up selling off towards most recent supports.
Yeah, and what's very interesting now is that the market is in a position where today's information wasn't bad enough to really, shock anyone to the downside, but there wasn't really like any great positive information said either. So the market's just like in a choppy situation right now, heading into a very important week. We can see, looking at this data here, we are heading into a triple witching week, and historically speaking, this has been pretty bad for the market. We could see it has closed positive only 28% of the time in situations like this. And for those of you who don't know what triple witching is, it's basically when stock options, stock index futures, and stock index options all expire on the same day, and that is this Friday.
Yeah, and it generally brings in some pretty crazy price action. You know, obviously not every single time, but whenever we look at this data here and we see that it only closes green 28% of the time, it's definitely a stat that we need to watch for, especially after seeing, I would say, all the choppy and negative price action from today. And, you know, we just can't forget that we're in a negative seasonality no matter what. September is the worst month of the year, especially the second half of October. Just look at the general price action that we see here on a 5 and 10 year average. That is pretty brutal. And especially if we go to this chart here, we can see that the second half of September specifically is the worst 2-week period of the entire year for the stock market, following the second half of June.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So, yeah, I guess it really goes to show is that while we're at all-time highs, and while that's a great thing, there are some downside risks, and you certainly have to pay attention to some of these support levels that, SPY tested today, because if those give out, we definitely can see some, pretty volatile moves. And speaking of volatile moves, let's take a look at Nvidia today, because that one definitely had a rough day and some bad news.
It really did. It closed down 2.62%, and we can see that in pre-market there was a lot of negative price action, and this actually impacted the SPY quite a bit today. And pretty much what happened is China came out and said, hey, we're banning these AI chips from Nvidia. I know that the Trump administration had agreed to a deal which Nvidia would receive export licenses for its H20 AI chips. But what ended up happening here is that the Financial Times reported that the Cyberspace Administration of China had ordered companies including TikTok, parent company ByteDance, and Alibaba not to buy Nvidia's RTX Pro 6000D chips. Now, I don't want to get too technical with all these chips, but at the end of the day, Wang ended up coming out and he said, we probably contributed more to the China market than most countries have. And I'm disappointed with what I see. And he also added on, but they have larger agendas to work out between China and the United States, and that he's understanding of that. So I thought it was kind of funny, though, that he said that they contribute more to China than some countries do. And he's probably not wrong, if we're being honest, but it's a pretty big piece of news for Nvidia. And, they have the heaviest weighting in the S&P 500. So whenever they have bad news like this, you have to talk about it.
Seriously, it's not like just any old company has some rough news. Like, they are the stock to watch. And Nvidia is a stock, of course, that has been crushing it not only this year, but over these past few years. And seeing news like this definitely is rough. Tom, what are some levels we should pay attention to for tomorrow with this one? Because while the stock held up like okay today, it is looking a little bit rough on this daily.
It definitely is. And as I zoom out a bit more on an hourly chart, we can see that there are some pretty big supports being tested in the short term. Right now, as of today, a support was broken right around 170 and 171. That was pretty rough. It's now coming up to test that as resistance here in after hours. If we end up holding above that tomorrow, I'm not going to be too bearish on Nvidia. But if we can end up holding under 170, that would actually be a really good sign. And I'll be watching for a push down to some of these recent wicks towards 168 to 169. Now, I know it doesn't seem like the craziest drop ever, but if we could end up breaking through those wicks, then I think we could see a real sell-off towards that 164 recent low. And I think that's where the main move would be if we could end up breaking this small range that Nvidia is stuck in right now. But I do think that 164 would be a huge target down there where it bottomed recently.
And what's nice when Nvidia is in play is that it's a stock that tends to move in a pretty momentum-driven way. So, you normally can catch pretty good opportunities with it. It also moves the market a ton. And it's also a stock that, a lot of people look at in a long-term sense as well. So, for all the people out there who've been waiting to catch a dip with this one, if we do see a drop, then maybe you can have some opportunities open up there. We will see. But looking closer at what's lined up for tomorrow, we can see that the earnings calendar is pretty much all clear. We do have DRI and FDS set to report before open, but nothing too crazy. FedEx and Lennar after close, and that's about it. Looking at the economic schedule, this is also pretty clear, which is good to see, so nothing to worry about there. But we do have a little bit of what we'll call like a hidden event tonight. Not really that hidden, but basically Meta's Connect conference is going to happen today at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They're set to lay out their new products and plans for AI, their smart glasses, and the metaverse. Keep a close eye on Meta tonight and for tomorrow because, this event can be big depending on what they showcase.
It definitely can. And like if we go and we look at Meta's chart, they've performed really well in 2025. They opened up the year right around, let's say, $586, $587, just under that $600 mark, and they peaked out just under $800 here. They're actually pretty close to the all-time high too. Like if this event is good for them, I would think that they could get up through that $800 resistance and start to post new highs, which could also maybe impact the overall market. So it's going to be a big event, and Meta has moved from these in the past for sure.
All right, well, let's get right into the fun stuff then, which are some setups and predictions. And a stock that is still on my radar is PDD, and you already know to the upside. I think we've hit on this one at least over the past 3 videos, maybe 4 or 5 at this point. Basically, there was a $10 million big money trade with it on its calls. It is continuing beautifully. These call options have, a couple weeks of time left to them. We're seeing great momentum, great follow through on the charts. I still like the risk reward playing PDD to the upside. This does not mean it has to rise, tomorrow. But it is trending up pretty well right now. And the more pressure it continues to push on these recent highs, the better the setup becomes. So either way, PDD is close on watch.
It recently peaked out at like 133 to 133.30, and today it pushed right through there with that gap up and overall move throughout the day. This was an amazing setup, and my gosh, the big money trader that put 10 million in this is going to be very, very happy. I can tell you that. But with my first setup, I'm looking at Energy Fuels. You guys know I've been watching this one quite a bit recently, especially throughout this overall uptrend that they've been in. In the short term, I really like the way that they pulled back yesterday, and then the way that they mounted a good comeback today. What I'm really watching for is for this recent high to end up breaking right around 14.50. If we could end up breaking that peak and going for a potential run, I could see $15 plus coming into play with Energy Fuels. Now, this is a pretty wild stock. The average percent rise is 3.9%, and we can see that it is overextended. It's been running up a lot recently, but it does have these good breakouts and will continue for multiple days at a time whenever these highs do break. So I'm definitely going to look for a bigger move with Energy Fuels here over the next few days, and hopefully we can get this overall continuation to continue playing out.
Sounds good. Another ticker that is definitely on my radar is SoFi, but it is to the downside. There was a recent $4 million big money trade with this one with the 26 strike put options for December 19th of 2025. So far, that trade has been falling, but it definitely piques my interest again. Of course, there's no guarantee that SoFi has to fall, but I really like the risk reward. When we look at this one, let's say on a daily chart, we can see right now it's around that $27 area, and maybe in the worst case scenario where it continues to uptrend and it breaks past, let's say 28, in that scenario, the setup will just lose, and it would be, less than a $1 per share loss, like in the absolute worst case, where in the event it does work out, I wouldn't be surprised to see SoFi get back to 24 or even much lower depending on how bad the sell-off is, and that is at least $3 in reward, if not more. We could see when SoFi has pulled back in the past, it tends to be pretty volatile, which is good. So either way, SoFi is close on watch.
Yeah, and it is very overextended right now, touching a large resistance. So if it does end up pulling back, this could be a great risk-reward setup here. So I will keep it on the radar too, Mike, especially with the big money trade. That was a big one too, almost $4 million. With my next setup, I'm looking at Nvidia to the downside. And I know we talked about Nvidia already in the video, but I want to look at it a bit closer and look at maybe a bit more of a technical trade here. Nvidia did bounce, and its low of day today was just above or just under 168.50. And one thing that I was looking at is on the Bookmap today, there was a ton of buyers stacked up all over this area. We can see 168, 169, and 170 had massive buy walls. There was actually over a million volume whenever 170 was tested and ultimately ended up breaking earlier. So that was a big move to the downside. And if we can break under the buy wall at 168, where there's 263,000 shares stacked up around the end of the day today, I'll be watching for a 3-point drop to the next buy wall of 165. And this is one thing that you can do with the Bookmap or the X-ray vision. You can use these supports to your advantage, or these buy walls, and you can see right where the buyers are stacked up. So, you could always try to hold it through 165, but I would definitely have some caution and look to lock in there. But I'm looking for a 3-point drop from 168 to 165 as that buy wall goes out.
Shout out Bookmap for these levels. You guys can save quite a bit with the link down below if you want to try it out. But besides that, Tom, let's jump right into today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have D-Wave Quantum, ticker symbol QBTS, to the upside.
QBTS was on fire once again, up 18%. If it can break out above $23.10 right at the high of day, then watch it up.
With the next one, we have NIO, ticker symbol NIO, also to the upside.
The China stocks keep going. If NIO can break out above $7.47, then watch it up.
With the last one, we have Cleveland Cliffs, ticker symbol CLF, but to the downside.
Yeah, CLF, I didn't know what went on with them today, Mike. That was a pretty rough drop. Even in after hours, tested the low of the day. But if they end up breaking under $11.10, then watch them down.
All right, so these three stocks are on the radar for potential continuations if and only if they break through the levels listed. As always, how you trade is much more important than what you trade. Prioritize smart, long-term oriented decisions above all else. You can learn all about this for free in the StockedUp Discord. But Tom, let's not waste any time and jump right into today's $1.4 million big money trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol BHVN. Biohaven is a biopharmaceutical company, and the trader here bought the 20 strike call options that expire on January 16th of 2026. This is a trade where they want the stock to go up. For my more advanced traders out there, this is technically a call debit spread where they also shorted the 40 strike call options. BHVN is a very volatile stock. It ranged from $6 a share towards its lows to highs of $60 over the past few years. Right now, it's sitting just below 15, and it looks like the trader here is positioning themselves to profit off of a move back up. They're risking around $1.45 million to make around $7 million in the best case. Very interesting setup, and I definitely like how it had that nice 9% up move today. We shall see.
Yeah, that was a good move today for sure, especially considering that it was kind of getting very low and also testing some critical supports. Like this support range down here from pretty much $13 up to around $14 has seen a ton of bounces recently. So I will be watching this for a potential bounce, and something that I like with this too is that there's quite a bit of time, right? It goes out to January, and I feel like as far as risk reward goes, this is another one where the risk reward setup can be really advantageous. Like if we stop out under this recent bottom right around 1280, and you even take it a little bit lower, like let's just even say 1230, give or take a little bit there, you can have a great risk reward ratio targeting $20 or more, being well above 2 there. So I think this is a great setup, Mike. Also on BHVN, whenever you zoom out on like a weekly chart, this is a pretty big support that's being tested too. I know that it looks kind of funny because we have to go so far back, but you can see the arrow pointing to this support from 2023 actually.
Sounds good. If you're new to the channel, definitely make sure to subscribe so you can get our videos recommended to you more often. We showcase big money plays in every single video, as well as just everything important you have to know about the stock market, whether it be earnings events, important economic events, cool charts and information, basically anything you need to know, we cover it every single day. When you subscribe, you'll get our videos recommended to you more often. And let's also give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Rock and Roll in the StockedUp Discord, who posted some crazy gains with Lyft today of like 744%. So I'm glad you had these. Looks like you did very well with them. Keep up the great work going forward, and it's really awesome to see posts like this one. Again, if you're into short-term trading, definitely check out that first link in the description and the comments down below to get access to Bookmap. You can save quite a bit, and it's, like Tom said, the X-ray vision of the stock market. You can see exactly where large buy and sell orders are stacked up, among many other things. It's definitely worth trying out at least once. It's definitely very useful. Besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.